Okay, we're going to finish up with chapter 24 and Northern European Baroque. And we left off with Galilee's triumph of the name of Jesus, um, looking at Baroque in Italy, and now we're going to look at Baroque in Spain. So the figure that we need to start with is going to be 24.25. So, yeah, 24.25. And so what's happening with Spain is it's a conglomeration of a whole bunch of different areas. We have their activities that are occurring in the New World, which will start to see paintings by artists from Europe in the New World here pretty soon in upcoming chapters. And Spain is also now controlling Portugal, the Netherlands, and of course its main peninsula of Spain. And the paintings during this time, it's going to be mostly paintings. We're not going to really see architectural elements. We're not going to see sculptural elements. We're going to really see just paintings. And the kings that followed Philip II of Spain realized the importance and the prestige of the visual imagery found in the fine arts. So a lot of that had to do with their coupling with the Catholic Church. So you're going to see a lot of interest in these visual imagery coming out of the paintings. And because of the interest in the Kingdom of Spain, the Philips are going to really put a lot of money into investing into the visual arts, which again is just going to help the Catholic Church as well, because the Spanish Kingdom, which is the powerhouse at this time, the dominant force at the secular level, is going to really promote Catholicism through the use of these paintings. So the three main people we're going to look at is Cotan, Ribera, and Velázquez. And with Cotan, he actually became a monk, and we're going to look at a piece of his figure 24.25 prior to him going into a renounced order of life, into a renounced level of celibacy in regards to everything in the world. And he was a fine still life painter, and that's what figure 24.25 is. Still life with game foul. And what a still life is, STILLLIFE, it's an artificially arrangement of inanimate objects. So you can see that with, if the birds were alive, it would be different, but they've been killed, so that makes it inanimate. So you have a combination of a melon, a piece of lettuce, as well as some other fruit and vegetation with the fowl, and slowly moving down at this angular pattern from the top left all the way to the bottom right. So that's what a still life is to create an arrangement artfully to create this level of value, tone, definition, and depth found in the objects themselves. Not so much the depth in which the objects are in this environment, but more about the texture and the depth of the object itself. So you'll see with still lifes, we'll also see in the Dutch Republic as well as Flanders in the Northern European Baroque period. You'll see that they'll be arranged in a way where it's very much not about the environment, it's all about the objects themselves. And the still life actually became known as a genre. So a genre in painting. And you think about what a genre is, Genre, it's a certain type of music. Like, for example, we have hip-hop genre, we have country genre, we have pop music genres, we have rock and roll genres. Those are all different types and disciplines of music. So the still life is a disciplinary genre in painting. Okay, not in 3D sculpture, but in painting in particular. So know what still life is, know that it's an arrangement of inanimate objects and that it's a certain type of genre in painting. And what Cotan would do is he would create a niche or a window that they are in, which creates an indeterminate environment, which is what I was just talking about. So creating this indeterminate environment that's not about spatial recession. Very subtly, you can see in this shadow box and in this window seal or this like niche, but it's more about the depth of the object and less about its placement in an environment. His focus was on the texture, the color, and the shape, which is heavily emphasized by, again, that tenebrism, which is something that Caravaggio really started to develop. So Cotan was influenced by that tenebrism that you saw with Caravaggio. And that tenebrism will set the stage for a lot of these still life paintings that we'll see in the next chapter, chapter 25 in particular. So that dark background and a little bit of a highlight in the environment, but mostly about highlighting the emphasis of value in shade and also in light, subdued colors throughout the objects themselves. All right, so that's the still life that we see with Juan Sanchez Cotan. And now we're going to take a look at Ribera, which is figure 24.26. And this is the martyrdom of St. Philip. And what Ribera is doing is, again, being influenced by Caravaggio. So you have extreme dark placements below St. Philip. But St. Philip himself is very luminous. So the attention to devotion to Jesus, a devotion to Catholicism in particular, because this is, again, work that's being done on behalf of the Catholic Church, because that's very prominent in Spain at this time. But the darkness that's below St. Philip is creating that sharp contrast between darkness and light. And the figures that are pulling the ropes that are pushing St. Philip up in almost this crucified-like fashion are very darkly cladded. But the body of St. Philip himself is very luminous and very bright. So again, Caravaggio is influencing these latter painters in Spain in particular. So what Ribera is doing is he wants to use these paintings to move viewers to increase their devotion and piety for the Catholic Church. So he's being commissioned by the Catholic Church to create these different types of paintings to increase that level of devotion and piety. He is developing extreme emotion and illicit passion in the figures that are strapping St. Philip up onto the post as well as St. Philip himself. But there is a level of calmness over St. Philip's face, which contrasts the emotions of the dingy grit that's coming from the figures that are creating the torture upon him. Okay, so again, that illicit passion and those extreme emotions are very Baroque. Okay, so really emphasizing that struggle that's going on into it. So it was Ribera himself that actually brought these techniques that Caravaggio started in Italy to Spain. So when Ribera went to Italy, he learned what Caravaggio was doing and then brought that tenebrism technique over to Spain. And very much sought after in Spain because it deals with heavy emotions. And the Spanish were very much about these heavy, passionate emotions that are going to drive the interest of Catholicism into the heart of their followers. Ribera is as well showcasing Spanish interest in devotion and courage. So this painting is meant to represent the courage that it's taking the Catholic Church to go through this Counter-Reformation to keep most folks involved in the Catholic sermons, in particular through the cathedrals and in the churches. So he's using this technique of passion, emotion, drama, and complexity that he's learned from Caravaggio to help emphasize the importance of the Catholic Church during this Counter-Reformation period, which is a very harsh time, and using this style that is very harsh in nature, from the sheer black to the sheer white, and the highlights and the shadows, and that shadowy realm that's happening around St. Philip, is meant to kind of emote that feeling. He's also, again, remember they're coming out of the Renaissance period, so there's an emphasis on the environment being very natural. So making sure that the ropes and everything that's inanimate in nature has some kind of naturalistic feel to it. So Caravaggio would place them in very dark and dingy environments. And here there's more light involved, but within the light you see all the details of the inanimate objects, which again is that classical approach to what was going on in the Renaissance, naturalism. So if you're going to have a wooden post, it needs to look like a wooden post. If you're going to have ropes, it needs to look as close as possible to a rope. All right? So you need to create that element of illusion through that study of optical naturalism, which again was coming out of the Renaissance period, and the Baroque really emphasized that more and more, in combination with very complex and dramatic subject matter. In this case, violent. So you'll notice all the way back to Caravaggio, it's a very violent like scene, a very harsh like scene, which was what was happening with the Counter-Reformation, with the reformers of the Protestants and the Catholic Church with the Counter-Reformation. It was a very harsh and volatile time. St. Philip is seen in a similar martyrdom as Jesus, as some of the present paintings that we saw of Christ. And so he's being positioned in that way, but it's not directly associating to the ransom of Jesus, but it is very much about a similarity to that. So making sure these saints reflect this continuous similarity after the ransom of Jesus. And another thing is he's using large bodies with that kind of Renaissance-like contour that Caravaggio even used. So these big, bulky bodies, and we're going to see that again in the next chapter too, with another artist in Flanders. And those big, heavy, muscular, bulky bodies are derivative of that antiquity, of the Greek and Roman antiquity. And the Renaissance classical artists used it, Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael, and then these Baroque artists are doing the same thing. Okay. So lastly, let's talk about Velázquez. And we'll start with figure 2429, Diego Velázquez. And Velázquez was actually the royal painter for the Philips, for the Kingdom of Spain. So he was the court painter. So that means when the court wanted something done for the palaces, for a vacation home, whatever it was that they were building, they would go to Velázquez, and Velázquez would be the one who would completely cover the walls of that building with the paintings. One thing is, with this one in particular, we're looking at the water carrier of Seville. It is a genre painting. It has figures in it, but it also has a still life element to it, which is really quite fantastic. So you have this very smoky-like aspect with the figures in the background and in the middle ground, where you have one in the very back who looks like he's drinking out of a glass jar, and he's very smoky, which is coming from that sfumato technique that Leonardo da Vinci formulated. And in the middle ground, you have this younger chap, this younger kid that's holding this glass, or handing this glass piece of glassware over to the man who's more in the foreground that's holding on to the jug. And the jug, the ceramics and the glassware that's in there is that still life genre painting. So what Velázquez is doing, he's combining a still life environment that he's painted as well as a setting of these figures in another environment, and kind of collaging them together in this painting of Water Carrier of Seville. which makes it a genre-like painting. And he learns again from Caravaggio. So all the subtle nuances of play from light to dark, in particular in the pottery in this painting, is coming from his interest and study with Caravaggio. All right. So you can see that with the pot to the bottom left, there's a really harsh shadow, and the light source is coming from the left that's really illuminating the still life aspect of the painting, but then the light is also illuminating the side of the face, the right side of the face of the boy in the center, but that light isn't really illuminating that much on the face of the main figure in the center. It looks like it has a different light source altogether. So it's very much about the still life in this painting, which is what is going to make it more of a genre-like painting. And the last painting that we'll look at with Velázquez is Las Meninas. Las Meninas. And this is considered his masterpiece. This is considered the best painting that he's ever done. It's like the amalgamation of all his different techniques. And the reason why it's considered a masterpiece is because it combines three different types of paintings. It combines well, four actually. It combines still life, which would be that of the actual paintings on the wall. It combines a self-portrait because he's present there painting the main figure to the far right, just before you see the back side of the canvas. It also is a marriage photo because in the very back center, in the reflection of the mirror, is Philip and his wife, the Queen. And so that is a marriage photo, and that's a certain type of genre as well, whenever you do a painting for a marriage. And then also the overall activities of an environment, which is the infant child, which is the daughter of the two, of the king and the queen, and with her entourage. So she has her maidservants, she has her friends, she has her dog, she has her clerical and priestly overseers and teachers all present around her, which emphasizes a different type of genre altogether. So an environmental genre, a marriage genre, a still life genre, and a self-portrait genre. So that's what makes this his masterpiece, is he's being able to take all these four different elements and put them into one painting. Another thing that is really significant, several things that are very significant about this, is it shows the Baroque interest in space outside and inside the painting. So by having it that marriage genre incorporated in this, with the reflection of Philip and the Queen in the mirror in the back, it incorporates the viewer in which that is looking at this painting as if they are the king and queen looking into this painting, because the way that they're positioned in the reflection of the mirror in the very back signifies that they are stepping into the room and observing the painting that's being done by Velázquez. And everybody suddenly freezes and pauses and looks towards you, when in actuality that individual is meant to be the king and the queen looking into the studio. And so what that means is they're taking this outside viewing, which is you and me looking into the painting, and incorporating it into the painting, making it inside with the reflective quality of the king and the queen in the background. So it creates this circulation of viewing from the outside viewer being part of the inside activities of the painting. So that's something that's very Baroque, very expansive. And we'll see that in Versailles in France, in Northern European Baroque here in the next chapter. Using mirrors to really give a sense of expanded space beyond what is directly being painted and what's directly being viewed. Again, all seem to be looking at the royals as if they had just stepped into it, which again gives an emphasis on the outside environment coupled with the interior environment of the space that the painting's being done in. And it's all about looking and seeing. So it's all about, what do you see in this painting? What is going on? The psychology of seeing and what is actually occurring. And they're all occurring at once. Like, this could very much just be a self-portrait. This could very much be just a marriage painting. This could very much be a royal activities painting. This very much could be a still life painting in and of itself. So it has all these different variables that are composed together to create this great big quadratic formula that we see in the painting of Las Meninas. Another thing that is very interesting, it has immortal gods painted in the painting as the background that are very obscured. And what that is doing, it's actually connecting the divinity of the king and the queen to these polytheistic gods that are coming from this Greek and Roman time. So it's giving all of this huge level of importance and respect to the kingdom of Spain. And that's something that El Greco did as well with the burial of Count Ortega in the previous chapter. So by associating the Philips kingdom with this level of, in this case, polytheistic divinity, it's very interesting that they're doing that, and they're choosing to do that and create this level of interest that connects them to something greater than the material world, which is something that goes all the way back into Mesopotamia times, coupling the ruler with divinity, almost like they're these divine earthly rulers. So it's something that was used in antiquity a long time ago. And remember, Baroque is still pulling from antiquity a little bit. And Velázquez is showing that again here by these two paintings that are up above the reflected image of Philip and the Queen that are associating them to these old kind of polytheistic gods, something dating all the way back to Greek and Roman time. All right. Well, I'll leave you with that, and then we'll move into chapter 25 here pretty soon.